I might be about to sound like a jaded post-leftist, no offense to my jaded post-leftist friends, but you ever notice how fucking boring politics have been lately? Think about it. When's the last time someone nuked a whole country just to create the environment needed for a new ideology? This is the ethos on which anti-realism is founded. No more facts, no more logic, no more pathos or logos, just pure insane bullshit. And as such, let's acknowledge the delightfully wacky off-compass ideologies that make up our ranks, shall we? For the purposes of this video, I'm going to describe 4 axes that someone can be off the compass in. These are the proprietary, prioritative, masterful, and individual axes. You can think of the difference between the off-left and the off-right on how much inherent moral value is put on strength/character. The proprietary axis dictates one's opinion on the nature of property. The proprietary off-left believes that all property, federal, private, and personal, should be collectivized. In fact, most proprietary off-leftists don't believe in the concept of property to begin with. Meanwhile, the proprietary off-right is characterized by the belief that all property is private and/or personal, and can be acquired by the strong or powerful as they deem fit. The prioritative axis dictates one's moral priorities. The prioritative off-left believes that ethical morality takes a backseat to hedonism and hedonic values, putting the joy and identitative freedom of the individual over the ethical approach. The prioritative off-right, on the other hand, believes that there is no such thing as identitative freedom. You are what you are, and what you are is defined by the strong. You might think that egoism and Ingsoc are inherently hedonic and stalwartist, seeing as egoism puts individual satisfaction first, and Ingsoc has authorities in society defining how those in it can identify. The key thing here is that no moral value is assigned to those traits, as neither egoism nor Ingsoc believe in moralism of any kind. The topic of egoism and Ingsoc brings us to the mastery and individual axes. The mastery axis dictates whether you believe in actively forcing your ideology onto other people and having that ideology dominate the world, or simply letting them come to your ideology as they may. On one side, you have insularists, people that believe that you have no right to actively force others to believe your ideology. While it may seem like that would make it impossible for you to do any form of praxis, that simply isn't true. While you can't force others to believe your ideology, you can still Molotov the institutions that oppose it. On the other side, you have dominionists, people that believe it is your right as the leading figure of an ideology to force the belief in it onto everyone, and that any form of dissidence is crime-think. While Ingsoc is obviously the example that comes to mind here, you can take Illuminatists for a more subtle approach. The individualist axis dictates how much value you think the individual has over authority. On one side, you have selfists, individuals who believe that they hold the only thoughts that matter in the world. Egoists, individualists, anarcho-nihilists, and civilists belong in this category. On the other hand, you have totalists, people who believe that the individuals have no value at all, and that it's up to the totality to dictate what is and is not allowed. If, for that matter, anything is allowed. Ingsoc and lesser ideologies belong in this category. So, with that out of the way, let's cover our bases and talk about what ideologies the anti-realist movement calls our allies. Ingsoc. Ingsoc is an off-totalitist and off-dominionist ideology, and while it was the first off-compass ideology to be fully recognized as off-compass, it's often given a bad reputation by many realists. Orwellian philosophers will point at any and all examples of a state getting a bit more statist than normal and label it literally 1984, which is, of course, ridiculous. 1984 is absolutely unrealistic and would crumble in moments in a realist society, which is why it's based as fuck. While many will mistakenly tell you that Ingsoc is socialist and conservative, these people are dumb and stupid. Conservatism is a moral philosophy that believes in traditional values because it's, quote, the right thing to do, unquote. Meanwhile, Ingsoc enforces traditional values purely because it puts the selfists in their place. Egoism. Egoism is an individually selfist and masterfully insularist ideology. It believes... well, it believes nothing, really. Egoism is effectively nihilism, but instead of being a sad, pathetic ideology, it says, fuck it, self-interest time. Egoists are unique in the fact that they can align themselves with literally any anarchist ideology, so long as it benefits them individually. While this often gets confused with Randian ideology, egoists don't care about sorting humanity into a proper hierarchy, or anything like that, like objectivists do. As such, egoists tend to fall into three categories. Stirnerist egoists, who assert that it's in the individual's best interest to join a union or commune. Center egoists, who economically align themselves however they see fit at the time. And rationalist egoists, who assert that free trade is the most ego-pleasing way. Oh, but Stirner was a communist! Yes, and here's another fun fact about Stirner. He would blow his fucking brains out if he found out that most adherents to his ideology, whose major tenets included nothing being objectively true, constantly insist that there's only one objectively correct way to apply his ideology. THETI. Transhumanist, egoist, theocratic imperialists are a sort of delightful off-compass, unreal middle ground between egoism and imperialism. They want to assert themselves as the transhuman egoist god emperor over a massive hive mind of humans, ensuring that they are the only ego. They bridge the gap between our two most contentious groups, totalists and selfists, by showing them that you can have dominion over everything while acting purely in self-interest. Darwinists are prioritative stalwartists and proprietary avaricists. They believe that private property and the moral high ground belong exclusively to the strong. Darwinism has supposedly shown up once or twice in reality, but true Darwinism is way more cool than that pussy eugenics shit. Paying poor and disabled people to sterilize themselves? Weak shit. Actively murdering poor and disabled people? Based! If you want an example of true Darwinism put into practice in fiction, take a look at the Purge films. And then stop looking at the Purge films. Because they're all bad. Communalists are prioritative hedonics and proprietary altruists. They believe that there is literally no difference between the individual and the community. But not like in a totalitarian way? More like, if you take someone else's toothbrush, it's fine because it was our toothbrush to begin with. Communalism is culturally and prioritatively leftist, because it takes the "there is one gender, women are property" meme and collectivizes said property. So now there are infinite genders that belong to everyone. Furthermore, it doesn't see any race other than our race. Which is to say the human race, not white people. Some people will tell you that communalism is the name of a real-world anarcho-communist ideology with a strong focus on ecology and syndicalist characteristics, and that turning it into the name of an internet meme is damaging to the seriousness of politics as a whole. Those people are correct. That's why they need to be purged in the realicide. Primalism and posthumanism are primitivism and transhumanism, except based. Primalism believes that sapience and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race, and that we should regress so far into primitivism that we become, in the words of primalist scholars, le funny monkey. Posthumanism, on the other hand, believes that you will be deleted, and that it is inevitable that soulless AIs will one day replace us. So, we may as well get it out of the way now. I, personally, am all for any ideology whose mission statement is to erase my consciousness from existence. Before we close out, let's give a crash course on each of the off-corners. Hive mind collectivism is totalitist, dominionist, and altruist. It wants to create a massive human hive mind where everyone is everyone. If you want an in-fiction example, think the Borg, the Cybermen, and pretty much any other example of an AI hive mind. Craterocracy is totalitist, dominionist, and stalwartist. It places the highest priority on the ethical concept of might makes right. If you want an in-fiction example, look at literally any way that Rome is represented in shitty historical fiction. Avaricianism is selfist, insularist, and avaricist, obviously. It's effectively the anarchist and capitalist ideals of ANCAP, minus the spook that is the NAP. If you want an in-fiction example, look at Mad Max. Soulism is selfist, insularist, and hedonic. It believes that all laws are unjust and bigoted, including the laws of physics. If you want an in-fiction example, look at the Liberation of Night. And that's it for now. an overview of the 8 Dreams political axes, and most of the more mainstream off-compass ideologies. I don't have a song for the end credits this time around. But do you hear that? That's the sound of a revolution, friends. And it sounds like me not putting enough effort into uploads.
Oh partigiano, portami via. Oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao.